When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. I am afraid. Not in the same way that the women were afraid. They were afraid because they didn't really understand what was happening. They were spectators to a cosmic drama that was unfolding, and they really didn't know what to make of it. They really didn't understand what it was all about. That's not why I'm afraid. I'm afraid because when I look into the church, not Shakespeare church, but the global church, the Christian church, I feel as if I am looking more often than not into an empty tomb. Except it isn't the resurrection tomb the women encountered on Easter morning, a tomb of possibility and promise, but rather it is a tomb that is cold and lifeless, a tomb that is despairing. Too often when I look at the church in the 21st century, I do not see resurrection. I only see a delay of the inevitable. And that's scary. But then there is that voice, that character in the tomb who tells me, reminds me, you are looking for Jesus. You are seeking the Christ. Well, he isn't here. Not here in this lifeless tomb, not here in this place of stale tradition and meaningless observance. If you wish to see Christ, go to the places where God's people are living out their faith in bold and vibrant ways. Go to the places where resurrection is happening, where life is seen in compassion and forgiveness and love. Go where relationships are built upon grace and trust and caring and service. Go where Christian people are living out the resurrection through the way that they care for each other and they care for the communities around them. Go where you will encounter Christ's hands in the community. You guys rock. Good stuff. And returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves, and then he went home, amazed at what had happened. It really is quite amazing. Peter runs to the tomb, he looks in, he sees the grave clothes, sees the symbols of death, but death is not what he sees. Instead, he sees possibility. He sees the likelihood that out of this place of death, life is being Life is being what? Resurrected? Recreated? Peter, when he looks into this tomb, he sees life being unleashed. Peter looks into the same tomb that everybody else looks into, including me. And instead of being afraid of it, instead of being disheartened by it, instead of being unnerved by it, he sees the power of Christ unleashed within the church. He sees what we have witnessed here in this place. He sees new life, new confidence, a sense of the possible, a sense of the life-giving. No wonder he is amazed. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. And then the disciples went back to where they were staying. Well, this is another telling of the tomb story. This time, Peter and the other disciple, who is actually John, both run to the tomb, but this time it is John who goes into the tomb, sees the symbols of death, and we are told he believes. But it never does tell us what he believes. He believes Jesus is risen from the dead, right? That seems pretty obvious. This is an Easter story, after all, a resurrection story. So when the story says he believes, it must be in Jesus' resurrection. What else could it be? Except the very next line tells us they still didn't understand that Jesus had to rise from the dead. So we are told John believes, but what does he believe in if not the resurrection? He comes into the tomb. He looks at the grave clothes. He looks at the emptiness of the place, and he believes. He believes that the story has not come to an end. Everybody else, including me, looks into the empty tomb in the 21st century and sees only death, sees loss, sees only the end. Maybe not right away, but inevitably the end. John, though, looks in and realizes the story is indeed not ending. It is beginning. But he doesn't just believe, he trusts it to be true. It's not only a matter of seeing the empty tomb and believing the story of Christ continues, the story of life continues. He trusts it to continue. In other words, he is prepared to commit his very self to that continuance. He is prepared to stake his life on it He is prepared to give his compassion, his service, his love to help that story continue. That's what's been happening at Shakespeare Church these past months, a congregation discovering that the story of life is not over. A congregation discovering that the story of life continues. And not just continuing, but resurrecting. Resurrecting new life, new possibility, and new opportunities to live Christ within the community. It's been an impressive example of trust on your part. To believe, to risk, to commit to the possibility of new life when so much else about the church around us, about the church around the world would suggest the cold, dark tomb is just waiting to be filled. The story is reaching its end. Not here. Not within the faith and confidence of the people of Shakespeare Church. Here, there is resurrection. Here it is the Easter story being told in fresh and life-giving ways. Here it is not just stones rolled away and grave clothes folded. Here it is Christ alive in the relationships you are nurturing, the ways of love you are exploring, the commitment to a community you are creating. What amazing trust you are showing to be rising out of the tomb in defiance of death and despair. Christ is alive, we said. The tomb, when we look to it, does not seem cold and lifeless and despairing, but instead seems promising and hope-filled and empowering. Christ is alive. And you have proven over and over and over again over the last while that he is alive in you, in the decisions that you make, in the ministries that you undertake. We had 10 people who came and participated in the Caring Christians workshop over the last number of weeks. That's the group that will eventually evolve into the compassion team that will minister to the needs of people within the congregation and within the wider community. 10 people came and participated in that. But the interesting part is that in June, we're holding another workshop based on the same thing, the same idea of nurturing compassionate ministry, and we've got more people coming to that. You are choosing to live compassionately as Christ's people. You have a hospitality team that is forming, being created to help nurture a spirit of fellowship, to help build Christian community one to the other, so that church is not seen as just something we do between 11 and 12 o'clock on a Sunday morning, but church becomes an expression of the relationships we share with each other and the love of Christ that we offer both to ourselves and to the community around us. We also have another team that is working on taking the church deliberately, intentionally out into the community. They're already planning how Shakespeare Presbyterian Church is going to be a vibrant and life-giving part of Field Day here in Shakespeare. And no doubt there will be other events that come after that, where we seek to present Christ, be Christ's hands within the community. All of these things, all of these choices that you are making are resurrection choices. They are choices that affirm the fact that you believe, you trust in the life of Christ that is at work within you. It would be very easy to look into the tomb, to see it cold and empty, to look at the church in the wide world and see some of the frustrating things that take place in other congregational settings and believe that that is all that we can hope for, all that we will see of the church, and we can despair over that. Or we can choose, as you have, to look into the church, to look into the tomb and see the birth of new life, to see the limitless possibilities that are there. You are Christ's people, Christ's resurrection people. And you have chosen over and over and over again to affirm that resurrection. To affirm the life of Christ within you. But perhaps most importantly, to affirm that that life of Christ does not dwell only here, but it needs to dwell out there. To affirm that the relationship that you share as Christian people is not only amongst yourselves, but is in holy connection to the people of the community around us. There is something of great Easter power in that. Something of life-giving resurrection in that. You have looked into the tomb. At first you might have been afraid, but then you were amazed. And now you believe. And now you trust. And now you live resurrection.